At Math Plus Academy, we've built our reputation on teaching kids arithmetic, teaching them how to do math mentally, and helping them learn how to think rather than just memorize. With our algebra and geometry curriculum, we're going to be able to do the exact same thing. Not just have memorized processes that get kids to get good grades, but actually teach them how to understand so they can be successful, not just in class, but beyond. So I'm going to give you today one example from algebra and one from geometry and show you exactly what I mean. So first, let's start with an algebra example. And a product like this often comes up in a pre-algebra course or early on in an algebra course. And students many times are confused about what do I do with this. And we could go into a discussion of the distributive property and other things to help kids figure out how to multiply this product out. But what most of the time what teachers will do is condense that to a little keyword called FOIL, which kids decode as they multiply the first terms, and the outside terms, and the inside, and then the last. First, outside, inside, last, which means first is A times C. Outside would be A times D. I add that. Inside, B times C. And last, B times D. And that is the product of those two terms. However, that's just a memorized process. Okay, let's look at that same problem again. A plus B times C plus D. And let's forget what we know about commutative property and all distributive property and all that. I mean, honestly, after you've been through math for a while, you probably don't even remember what those definitions mean. But this is something you can remember. We all remember that the area of a rectangle is simply the width times the height. That's easy. And if I cleverly break this rectangle into four and label it A and B over here, and C and D over there, then you would agree that A plus B times C plus D, which is that, is going to be the area of this rectangle. And then each of these little areas is pretty easy for me to figure out. This little one is AC, this one's BC, this one's AD, and this one is BD. And clearly if I add these four together, it doesn't matter what order I add them in, as long as I add them up, I'm going to get exactly what FOIL was telling me, except I've got a mental picture now that helps me understand why this works, not just how it works. And what's great about that is, if I make the problem slightly more complicated, FOIL will let me down. But my understanding of math will not. So now I have 3 terms here and 2 terms there. You can't use FOIL anymore. So what do? Well, I'm going to go back to my mental model of a rectangle, except this side is now going to be A plus B plus C, so I'm going to divide it into 3 parts. And the other side is still going to be D plus E, and I multiply AD, BD, CD, AE, BE, CE. And of course, if I add these up together in any order, it doesn't matter, I'm going to get the product of these 2 terms. And so again, my mental picture helps me solve this problem no matter what I do up here, whereas FOIL is only good for that one special case. So that's a really good example of the types of things that you want your child to understand about math rather than just memorizing everything. Okay, let's talk geometry. So in geometry, here's a question that comes up. We all remember Pythagorean theorem. If I label this thing like this, a triangle with the right angle, everybody remembers that Pythagorean theorem says that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But when you first see that, that's a pretty surprising result. I mean, why does that have to be? Who knows? But it seems to have worked. Some guy named Pythagoras says it is true, so therefore it is. We memorize it and move on. Well, what I'm going to show you is a really cool way to prove that this is indeed true. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to draw a square. I'm going to break each side in a plus b. This is a lot like what I did with the algebra problem. There you go. And I'm I'm going to draw those triangles. So there's a right triangle with A and B, and we'll label that C. Here's another one, A, B, and C. There's a third right triangle, A, B, and C. And a fourth right triangle, A, B, and C. Okay. Now, kind of looks like there's a square inside of there. Clearly it has 4 equal sides. It's either a square or a rhombus. If I could prove that one of the angles is a right angle, then I would know for sure that that's a square inside. Well, look, here I know that going across this line has to be 180 degrees. And this angle, which is one of the angles of the right triangle, and this other one, have to add up to 90 because they're part of right triangles, which leaves this being 90 for sure. So I've got a right angle there, I've got a right angle here, here, and here, and so what's inside is a square. Great! You got a nice little picture there. What do you do with it? Well, let's look at the area of the large square. That is A plus B, right? One of the sides squared. And the area of the stuff inside is these 4 triangles plus this one square. Well, each of these triangles, you remember the area of a triangle is 1/2 the base times the height. So each of them is a half A times B, and I have 4 of them. And then I have the C squared of that square. Now, the whole thing has got to be equal to the sum of its parts, so I can set these two equal. And while I do that, I'm going to expand this term out. A squared plus 2ab plus b squared equals c squared plus, and it's 4 times a half, which is 2ab. This 2ab term cancels out that 2ab term, and look what I'm left with. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay? Again, simple picture. I derived the Pythagorean theorem in less than a minute and a half, I think. And again, it's a picture that's going to help me understand rather than just memorize. Those are the kinds of things we're going to teach in our algebra and geometry classes. Going to give your kids a much deeper understanding of these subjects, allow them to be successful in middle school, high school, on their SATs, in college, and then become expert problem solvers, which is a highly valued skill in the workforce. You can find out more about our algebra and geometry curriculum, see it in more detail on March 5th from 4 to 5. We're having an open house. It's our middle school math day, and you're going to want to go to mathplusacademy.com/event, and there you can RSVP and let us know that you're coming, and you'll get significant discounts on our algebra and geometry classes.